All right, we're here on section 6 and 7 of the legislature, one on compensation, how do they get paid, and then also how bills become laws. We're going to spend most of our time here, but let's just quickly look at the compensation here. Senators and representatives shall receive compensation for their services to be ascertained by law and paid out of the Treasury of the United States. This says it's actually been changed by the 27th Amendment, and we'll look at that 27th Amendment later. That did change how they can be paid. They shall not be arrested unless they do treason, felony, or breach of peace. So they shall be privileged from arrest during their attendance of the session. So they can't be like arrested for, too many traffic tickets if they're in session of Congress, because they didn't want things like that happening. They wanted them to stay there to be able to vote. And in going to and returning from the same, and for any speech or debate in either house, they shall not be questioned in any other place. So yeah, they can't be arrested for little things while they're in session of Congress, just so that they can stay and vote. Now, this last one, we'll read quickly and I'll explain it. No senator or representative shall, during the time for which he was elected, be appointed to any civil office under the authority of the United States which shall have been created, or the emoluments thereof shall have been increased during such time. And no person holding any office under the United States shall be a member of either house during his continuance of office. So that just means you can't have a government job while you're a senator, and you can't ever have a government job if you were a legislator and gave a raise or created the job. So what they wanted to make sure is that senators didn't go in and create jobs for themselves and then give themselves fancy jobs. So you can't have a government job if you were a representative and you created it or ever gave it a raise. And if you have a government job, you cannot be elected to be a representative because they're afraid you're just going to give yourself raises. So that's some things on compensation. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we talk about the 27th Amendment. But now, looking at how bill becomes a law. We'll read this through and then we'll discuss it. So all bills for raising revenue, so these are taxes, right? So taxes shall originate in the House of Representatives. So the Senate can't start tax bills, the House has to. But the Senate may propose or concur with the amendments as on other bills. So the House starts the tax bills, however the Senate can, change things and see if the House of Representatives likes it. But all tax bills have to start with the House of Representatives, and that's because it's the people's money, and they wanted it to start with the group of people, or the representatives that were closer to the people. Now, every bill which shall have passed the House of Representatives and the Senate, so it has to pass both, shall, before it become a law, be presented to the President of the United States. If he approve, he shall sign it, but if not, he shall return it with his objections to that House in which it shall have originated, who shall enter the objections at large on their journal and proceed to reconsider it. If, after such reconsideration, 2/3 of that House shall agree to pass the bill, it shall be sent together with the objections to the other House, by which it shall likewise be reconsidered. And if approved by 2/3 of that House, it shall become law. But in all such cases, the votes of both houses shall be determined by yeas and nays, and the names of the persons voting for and against the bill shall be entered on the journal of each house respectively. If any bill shall not be returned by the President within 10 days, Sundays excepted, after it shall have been presented to him, the same shall be a law, in like manner as if he had signed it, unless Congress by their adjournment prevent its return, in which case it shall not be a law. All right, did you get all that? That's how Congress makes laws. Now let's explain it just a little bit here. I'm going to move this over so I have some space to write. Basically, let's look at the pathway of how things become a law. First of all, you have to have a bill. Come on, pen. There you go. A bill. And a bill is just a proposed law. Now, I am going to use some abbreviations on my drawing here, so just bear with me. A bill has to either start in the House of Representatives or in the Senate. Now, if it's a tax bill, tax bills have to start in the House of Representatives. Now, they vote on it, and what does it take? It takes 50%. So a majority, actually just over 50%, so 51, I guess, right? So let me put a little greater than. That's a greater than sign. Greater than 50%. If greater than 50% pass it, what do? They send it to the other house. So if the Senate passes it, it goes to the House. If the House passes it, it goes to the Senate. Now, what happens if it's not passed by 50% in this first one? If either the House of Representatives or the Senate doesn't pass it by 50%, then the bill is dead. If they don't pass it, it dies. That's my dead bill. I guess it should be sad. Man, these are like the worst drawings ever. I hope you get this. All right. So if the House passes it by 50% or the Senate passes it by more than 50%, it goes to the other one. Now, what do they have to do? Now, when it goes to the other one, they also have to pass it by more than 50%. If they fail, if they don't pass it by 50%, what happens? It dies. So far we have two ways that a bill can die. And those two ways are if any of the houses don't pass it by 50%. If that happens, the bill is dead. But if both houses pass it by 50%, where does it go then? Maybe I should change colors to make this a little more interesting. Where does it go then? Then it goes to the President of the United States. He can do three different things. He can sign it. If he signs it, it becomes a bill. All right, so there's the first way it can become a bill. It has to pass both houses and then the president signs it. Now it's law. So it becomes a law. He can not sign it. What happens if he doesn't sign it? Well, if he doesn't sign it and they wait 10 days, it still becomes a law. If he refuses to sign it, sometimes presidents want to do that. They don't want to sign it, but they don't want to veto it either. So they don't sign it. If it waits 10 days and he doesn't sign it, it still becomes a law. They have a special word for this. This is called a pocket veto. In other words, the president just puts it in his pocket because he doesn't want to sign it, but he doesn't veto it either, so it becomes a law. So the president has, if he decides not to do anything, it still becomes a law. So far now there are two ways it becomes a law. It passes both houses and the president signs it, or he doesn't sign it. What's the last option the president can do? I'll change colors because this is sad. I'll choose brown. This is sad for the law. He can veto it. Now, if the president vetoes it, he says, no, I don't like this law, we're not going to do it. If the president vetoes it, is it dead yet? No, it is not dead. What does he do? When it's vetoed, it's sent back to the House and the Senate. That's an S. This time they have to pass it by 2/3 a majority. If both houses pass it by 2/3 of majority, let me get back to my red, that bill becomes a law. What happens if they can't pass it by 2/3 of majority? Then it is dead. Oh, it's not a law. All right, boy, that is one big mess. Let's see if we can follow this again to make sure we understand it. Because you're going to want to make sure you do. You start with a bill. The bill goes to one of the houses. If they pass it, they give it to the other house. So if the House passes it, they move it to the Senate. If the Senate passes it, they do it to the House. Now, if they don't pass it, it's dead. When they pass it, if they do pass it, it goes to the other house. If they don't pass it, it's dead. So far, two ways it can die. Should we count these? Let me even get another color here. I'll do yellow. So this is one way it can die. This is two ways it can die if they don't pass it. Now, if if it does get passed by both, the president signs it, it becomes a law. What color should I use for that? I'm going to use green. So there's one way it can become a law, is if the president gets it and he signs it. If he doesn't sign it within 10 days, it still becomes a law. That's a pocket veto. So that's two ways it can become a law. Now, if the president vetoes it, it's not dead yet. He sends it back to the House. After the president veto, they have to pass it by 2/3. If they pass it, that is the third way it can become a law. So those three ways it can become a law. If they can't pass it by 2/3 a majority vote, then it is dead. Oh, wrong color. It's yellow, I forgot. Then it is dead. So there are three ways a bill can die, and there are three ways a bill can become a law. So make sure that you kind of understand that process, how it works, that flow chart. That is how they set it up to make bills into laws in the United States of America. It takes both houses agreeing and the president agreeing. If the president doesn't agree, then it requires 2/3 a majority in both houses, and then it can still become a law. That's how it works, according to the Constitution. All right, a couple more sections.